Good morning and welcome to Inside Tennessee. Along with my colleague John North, I'm John Becker. We're moderating the discussion this morning. We are pleased to have with us the mayor of Knox County, Glenn Jacobs. Nice to have you back with us, Mayor.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I'm going to introduce our panel. We'll get to questions. Eddie Smith is on the end there. He's a Republican and former state lawmaker.
Good morning, John and John.
Good morning.
Good morning. Don Bosch, Democrat, runs his own law firm.
Gentlemen, good morning.
Good to see you. Mayor, let's lead off with this. A new stadium in downtown Knoxville opens in weeks. You have been supportive of this, as have so many people across the county and the city. What are your metrics, your markers to say this was a success? Can you give us some specifics?
Sure. On the fiscal side, which is what I'm very much interested in, it's basically how it performs as a return on investment. One of the metrics that we did have as far as the contract with Boyd Sports was $150 million of private investment that would come up with the stadium. That's been surpassed, and that will keep on going up. And then we also, around the stadium, in the same district, but not necessarily adjacent to the stadium, there's also development, a lot of things happening. So in the end, I think it's going to be very successful as far as being a revenue producer. And then obviously you have the intangibles. We talk about civic furniture and just giving people more stuff to do, especially young folks. And this should accomplish that.
There's been a lot of consternation about getting there, parking. Sure. Is there enough? What's your take on that?
Yes, there will be. Even before we built the stadium, that was all taken into account. And I don't remember the exact number, but you have so many within half a mile, so many within a quarter mile, so many parking spaces within whatever distance away from the stadium. So when you take into account parking at the Coliseum, State Street Garage, other places, and there's going to be a shuttle run from certain parking lots, there will be, as well as, when you think about stadiums, we often think of a big stadium in the middle of a huge parking lot, right? Well, the issue with that is that doesn't produce enough revenue to actually pay for the stadium. However, those parking lots can be so big that you're still taking a shuttle to the stadium anyway. We see it with Tennessee football games. We see it with Titan football games. So it'll be something to get used to, obviously, but in the end, I think it'll be good.
Fans will figure it out. Our reporters tested it. It's about a 20-minute walk from those.
Right. And the wonderful thing is, along that 20-minute walk, there's stuff to do. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of the point of doing it that way as well.
It's been on budget, Mayor, but there's been sort of a secret reason for that, and it's Randy Boyd. He's always been willing to sort of step up. Pretty unusual.
It is. Frankly, this project, I would have never been interested in it if it hadn't been someone like Randy Boyd. You see other places that try to do things like this, and they have someone that comes in from the outside that is really just there to, in some cases, take advantage of the taxpayers. And this was certainly not the case here. And as you said, Randy's put a lot of his own money into this. This will probably be, at least for a while, the nicest minor league baseball stadium in the country. And that's because of Randy. We had a set amount that we said that we would guarantee, and that was it. Everything over that, and there has been a lot over that, is on Randy.
And just quickly, it's worth reminding people who are watching, because some people still don't understand this or don't know it. The county and the city did not issue any debt for this.
Right. Yes, it is a sports authority, which is a joint city-county organization, but nevertheless, they were the ones that issued the debt, and we will pay some portion for a while anyway out of our motel tax fund, which is very healthy. Mm-hmm. Same with the city. But as far as a tax increase or anything like that, it will not happen because of the stadium. In fact, I believe years from now it'll actually help produce more revenue, and that should be good for keeping taxes in the future where they're at.
So, Mr. Mayor, one of the other components of the stadium is the housing component in apartments, even some condominiums. One of the complaints that we were hearing early is, again, more housing, but unaffordable to many. What is your understanding of affordable housing versus more high-end housing, and the balance maybe that we need in the community? Because I don't think anybody disagrees that we need more affordable housing within Knoxville and Knox County.
Well, think of it this way. You have obviously different stratas, but when you have a housing shortage like we do, that drives the price up of every strata.
It does.
So even if you have, say, luxury or premium housing, what's going to happen is some of these folks that can afford that are currently causing prices to go up because they're
seeing that in home sales right now.
Yeah, they're in lower priced housing. So
more is better.
More is better, even if it is the higher end housing, because eventually what that'll do is that should relieve some of the price pressure that we're seeing on all the stratas.
Are there any private builds, so to speak, of apartments or housing that maybe even with some government help are going to be, I don't want to say fixed rent like we might see in New York or some other place, but commitments to keeping rental rates at a level where a family of four that makes $50,000, $70,000 a year might be able to get a two-bedroom apartment?
We do those all the time, actually.
Is that happening there?
That's not happening there, but it is happening around the county. And that particular development, the stadium, it is surrounded by city housing, essentially. But as far as your question, in other areas of the county, we already do that. And it is through THDA, it's through low-income housing credits and those sort of things.
We're going to get to more questions with Mayor Jacobs. Eddie, we'll let you lead off. We're going to take a quick break on Inside Tennessee. And we did have the mayor on to talk about the county budget. He's in the process of building it. More of those questions coming up. Back on Inside Tennessee with Knox County Mayor Glenn Jacobs. We talk baseball and also budgets. Eddie, you have a question that leads us into our budget discussion.
Yeah, so when we look at what happened around the Nashville Stadium, and I think we can kind of expect that here in Knoxville, that there'll be additional housing development. There's only two ways that government gets more money. You either raise your taxes or you increase your tax base. As we look at that, what do you kind of project for the tax base, and looking kind of long term as you're building the budget this year and until your last year in office?
Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I could to see what the future holds. But we are seeing more private development really around the county. And one of the core goals of the stadium was redevelopment in that area, and we are seeing that, whether it's housing but also retail and commercial. And then in other parts of the county as well, we have businesses coming in. It's not only property tax, obviously, also sales tax. So we want businesses to come here, not only to provide jobs for the folks that live here, but also hopefully to offset property taxes.
The budget itself is more than $1 billion. If you look at it in terms of $1, 62 cents of that budget will go to schools. Mayor, what are you looking at in terms of building that budget and your highest priority this go around?
Right. This year we do have an issue with revenue. It's called the property sales tax ratio. I'm not going to get into the weeds of that because it is a little complex to understand. But essentially, business personal property tax and utility pilots are going to produce much less this year because of state law. That's why we went to a 2-year appraisal. So that will be addressed actually next year. But for this year, we will see not necessarily a shortfall, but not the growth that we've seen in the past. Now, we'll catch up next year, but nevertheless, this budget is going to be tight because of that. Now, we do have some other revenue sources that have come through. This budget is basically a status quo. We do some things with roads that we obviously need to do, and some other things like that, but there's not going to be any fancy projects coming out of this budget.
Do you know that all the other office holders who might be, such as the sheriff, asking for some help, does he realize that, or is
yes,
he?
We've had those discussions already, and I think everybody is sympathetic. Obviously, it can be difficult because they have offices to run, and I certainly get that. But at the end of the day, too, we all have to understand that there's reality, and it's just plain math and numbers at some point. So we'll all do the best that we can, but we do face some constraints that we haven't had in the past.
One follow-up on that, Mayor, and it deals with debt service, which, as you well know, because you all have been watching it happen, has continued to steadily increase in terms of what Knox County has to pay out to take care of the bonded debt. I think we're looking at, $88 or $89 million, and it's just going to keep on going until we hit about 100 or 101. That's not because of stuff you've done. This is sort of things coming new that came out 20 years ago even.
Right.
But should we be worried about that, considering we're in a flat revenue situation?
Obviously, it's a concern. At the same time, we have been looking at this. We have very healthy reserves in all of our funds, not only the general fund, but others. But yes, it is a concern and something that we are going to have to deal with when that comes due. What you're referring to is just basically there were, back in the early 2000s, there were some interest-only loans taken out. The state doesn't allow that now. Everything, it's flat debt service, but it was allowed back then. And the bills are coming due. So unfortunately, they're coming due right now.
That's what Dave Ramsey would tell you, don't do that
over the next couple of years. So it's baked in the cake. It's nothing that's going to hit us by surprise, and basically we just have to figure out a way to deal with that.
You mentioned transportation. I want to get to that, and then I'll bring you in, Bosch. But just to keep up regular maintenance, 200 miles of roads need to be paved. We do 35 to 60 in any given year. What can you tell people about that backlog and how you attack that going forward?
A couple years ago, we used a high-tech system to essentially inventory the condition of all the roads in Knox County, which allows us to make better decisions about where to pave and what kind of pavement to use and all those sort of things. One of the things I've learned since I've been in office, which I learned a lot of things I didn't really want to know that much about, but is there's all these different kinds of asphalts and what kind of blend is the best. And sometimes what happens is you end up making a decision that's political because you get enough phone calls about this road. Well, now we can say, okay, this road is actually a 75. You know, these roads are on a scale of 100, these roads are 50s. These are the ones that have to be done first. So we have, we have moved in that direction. Obviously, we wish we had an unlimited budget and we could do everything that we can or everything that we would want to. But we've been able to use technology to hopefully help with that.
And Mayor, one of the things that, again, going back to looking down the road, I know last year you all announced the Green Heck opening out. There's some big things on the horizon that aren't quite there yet. So you kind of see this as more of a short term as
Yes.
we've got some of those bigger industries coming in to help with the county budget.
Yeah, exactly. And again, since none of us have a crystal ball, we don't know which way things are going to break one way or the other. But I'm very excited about the Green Heck project. They bought the entire Midway Business Park, which is 300 acres. Currently, they're talking about 400 jobs and about $600 million in capital investment, but that will increase as they build out over the next 10 years or so. So that's going to be, it'll end up being a huge project, and it is the biggest manufacturing project over the last decade in Knox County. So we're really excited and thrilled about it.
We're going to take another quick break with the mayor. We'll be back with more questions. Don Bosch will lead us off the top of the next break. Back on Inside Tennessee with Knox County Mayor Glenn Jacobs. We're talking budget. Don Bosch.
I'm going to come back to something that John North was talking about a little bit, and that's budget and debt service and what's going to happen over the next 5 years. I did a little bit of research, which is rare sometimes for this show, but right now I believe that our debt service reserve fund is sitting at about $30.4 million, with the debt service that is now being paid and increasing by 2029, with the projected revenues and with our rainy day fund, as we like to call it. That rainy day fund is going to go from 30 point whatever million dollars down to potentially $3 million. And really, that's a quick slide. And this is not a problem you caused, but it's a problem that you're starting to have to address now, and that the next county mayor is going to get hit full face with. And my question then becomes, it looks like such a significant problem that we may not be able to grow our way out of it. We now, with the state legislature talking about the removal of sales tax on food, which I personally think is a good idea, but it has a grander effect on the municipalities than it would on the state. Is it time, after 28 years of not even considering a modest property tax increase, and we're unique in the state and the country for going that long? Now are we in a crisis situation where maybe to deal with this problem we need a modest property tax increase?
It's not a crisis situation, and I would also remind everybody that in 2019 we didn't realize this thing, COVID, was coming. And that was a complete game changer negatively. And that's what I say, we don't have a crystal ball, so we can't predict things.
But we have one here.
Well, no, you don't, because we don't know what's going to happen with growth. And I understand what you're saying. We don't know what's going to happen with other things, other revenue sources that come online. Even with this budget, if you'd asked me 2 months ago, I'd have been completely freaking out because I'm like, oh my gosh, we lost this amount of property tax revenue because of the sales ratio and this. And then we have other things that come in better than we thought. We have additional revenue sources that are coming in that we didn't realize we were going to have. Obviously, at some point, you maybe have to look at that, but we're not in the crisis where we have to do that.
But we're entering that phase, and what we do know, unlike COVID, unlike whether growth is going to be sufficient to sustain increased expenses, we do know what that debt service is going to be, and I believe it will go over $100 million annually. Beginning 28 or 29. So that is a factor we know, and I'm just concerned. Are you going to leave this to the next county mayor, or is this something you think you can do something about in your last couple of years?
As far as what we're going to do, I'm not going to raise property taxes.
I know that.
Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to do everything we can to put the next mayor in the best position through growth, through cutting where we have to do and all those sort of things. But we're not going to raise property taxes. We're not at that point yet.
And has County Commission and yourself considered what we did on the state level, which is increasing when there's good times, increasing the amount going into the rainy day fund so that you have that down the road?
Yeah, and we already do that, obviously, as much as we possibly can. And there's other things that are happening as far as state legislation. They're talking about cutting. Right now, there's a sales tax admin fee. Essentially, we collect the state collects the sales tax, and then we get our portion of it back. However, they take a little chunk. They keep a pretty big chunk, actually.
There's about $60 million statewide
which was justifiable back when you were doing it on spreadsheets. Since it's all automated, it's not now. So they're dropping that. There's some other taxes that. What happened was, I believe it was with Governor Sundquist, a lot of the revenue that the county was bringing in, the state took because they needed to shore up their budget. And I think that some of the legislators are realizing now, and this is not criticizing anyone, but they're realizing now that when the state cuts taxes, but it does so by basically bringing in revenue that used to go to the counties, they're shifting the tax burden onto the counties. And I've heard that from a number of legislators. So that's one of those things that hopefully over the next couple of years we will see some of those revenue sources will come back to the county, at least a portion of those.
Let's move to politics. Congressman Rose announcing he's running for governor this week. Should he be the next governor, or should Marsha Blackburn be the next governor?
If Marsha decides to run, if Senator Blackburn decides to run, I would support her.
And if she does run and she has commercials, will you be in them?
She hasn't asked me that yet.
Well, let's do it.
Potentially.
And would you be interested in her Senate seat if she got to make the appointment?
I don't know. Washington, D.C., look at what's happened with Congressman Burchett. And
he lost his mind.
Yeah. Well,
I'll say it right here.
No, it's just that it's just so toxic up there. And, you think about someone like, Tim, who's just a great guy, and he does his job as best he can, but sometimes he feels just kind of miserable trying to push back and drain the swamp. So I don't know at this point. I don't know what my political future holds.
We do have a county mayor's race coming up next year. Will you endorse?
No.
Not going to endorse?
No, I'm going to stay out of that.
Okay.
Well, I bet you won't endorse the Democrat.
I'm going to stay out of it, Don.
There you go.
Mayor, we hear a lot about the vitriol in politics. You're living politics, and no doubt you see it online. We've talked about civility on this program time and time again. What's your solution, having lived it?
That's a very difficult question because it is a very toxic environment and it's very contentious. Even since I got into this realm 6.5 years ago, I guess a little further back if you consider my election. And I think one thing, and I hope, it's difficult because even now some of these national issues that probably shouldn't radiate down to the local level do, and everyone concentrates on that. One of the things that I always tell young people is we watch the big cable news networks or the broadcast networks, and everything's about Washington, D.C. I wish folks would understand that local government is really where the rubber meets the road, and state government to some extent. And a lot of the things that are happening in Washington may not have as big an impact on your life as what's happening, the decisions that are made by myself, by Knox County Commission, by the City of Knoxville, by American Cancer.
You will walk down and see the city mayor, who's a Democrat, and you guys work together and get a lot of things done together.
Yeah, and,
that's not like Washington.
Well, and there are things that we disagree on, so we just agree to disagree on those. And I wish it could be more like that. Unfortunately, especially at the national level, I don't see that happening. Our country is it's just in a unique period, and I think you would look back at history, we've seen this before, and often, and I certainly hope this is not the case, but often it takes a crisis to bring everyone together and to realize that we're all Americans. And right now it's just all headbutting, and it's no longer the other side is wrong, it's now the other side is evil. And that's not a place that we should be, but unfortunately that's where we find ourselves.
Mayor Jacobs, we appreciate your time. You've always been generous with it. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We'll be back with more of our talk around right after this. Back with our talk around. Eddie, the toughest task for Knox County's mayor as he builds a new budget?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's just the fact that it's a stagnant revenue year, because everything else hasn't been stagnant. Everything else continues to increase in prices. So making those tough decisions, I remember Governor Haslam always said, we're not choosing between good and bad, we're choosing between good and good. And that's really what they've got to focus on this year is what's the best good that we can do.
Don?
Well, I think Mayor Jacobs said it, is he doesn't want to set the next county mayor up for failure. And there really is a looming problem. I'd call it a crisis. The mayor was reluctant to call it that. But with the debt service that was not caused by Mayor Jacobs or Mayor Burchett, it was back on Mayor Ragsdale's watch. But that debt service is going to be crushing, and relative to projected revenues, even optimistic projected revenues, we're going to deplete our rainy day fund nearly to effective zero, 30 million to 3 million, potentially and realistically. And it'll be on the next mayor, but right now, Mayor Jacobs could consider some things that might be important to set us up and make us get through this time.
He'll offer a budget message, John. What do you think we'll hear from him when he does?
Well, it was a pretty flat budget last year for our current year, and it's going to be the same thing. I think they're going to put a great spin on it and say, look at all of the success that we've had. We continue to enjoy growth. We don't have any extra new revenue, but this is still a great place to live. You're going to hear that.
I asked the mayor what his metric is for the new stadium downtown. Eddie, if there's one thing you're watching that will tell you it's a success, what is it?
It's not really one thing, but it's really looking at the tertiary and the secondary areas around the stadium. So how does it affect the hotel motel tax? Do we see more room nights being used? Do we see greater investment in or expenses of people using shops, especially around Market Square, that might not be in necessarily that zone for the paying the stadium, but all those secondary and then the tertiary areas, I know all the way up into Burlington. What do we see in development going up through Burlington? How does it start affecting those tertiary areas of the city and the county over the next few years?
Don?
Sort of a similar spin to what Eddie's just said. I agree it's the tertiary things, but what I'm looking for, what opportunities would there be for lower income, smaller businesses, things that do not generate, this doesn't need to be just a rich person's playground, and whether it be housing, whether it be shops, whether it be restaurants, whether it be the ballpark itself. But is it going to help everybody in our community, just not those that can afford it?
John, the significance of this ballpark downtown, we've talked about it on this program, and you've been in this community for a long time. How do you sum it up for somebody who's like, oh, there's a new ballpark?
Yeah, it's enormous. It's like taking a brand new thing and plopping it in the middle of a place that has never seen anything like that before. As you were talking, I was thinking, what if it's too good of a thing? There may be some people that live in the old city or that approximate to it that are like, that's kind of too much of a good thing for me. We'll see.
I don't think you're going to see that, just because when you look at, I can remember 10 years ago in Nashville, the Gulch was just railroad tracks. Now you go down there and it's shops and houses. People want things where there's convenience, so I think that you'll see some of that for people and people who want.
We have seen that problem with other urban ballparks around the country.
We're going to leave it there for now. We're back next week with Congressman Rose, who has announced for governor. We'll see you then for that.